few months before the diagnosis was when I really started unmasking a little bit. It was more so one of those things where I knew work was probably my biggest energy drain of trying to look like a normal, happy corporate girly. And no, I am complete opposite. Like social interactions, can't do it.
Hello and welcome to Divergent Paths. I'm your host, Dr. Regina McMenomy. I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor, and this is a podcast, not medical advice. Have you always felt a little different but didn't know why? Have you struggled with tasks that some people seem to handle with ease? Are you mystified by social norms and interactions? Divergent Paths is a podcast for late diagnosed neurodivergent people that explores the joys and frustrations of having a spicy brain. In each episode, we'll dive into the unique experiences of discovering an ADHD, autism, or both diagnosis later in life. What defines a later in life diagnosis? Anytime the realization happens outside of the so-called norm of childhood and adolescence. Sam Rockwell is a silversmith, a gamer, and an anime fan. We met on Threads where we discussed how our perception of our self-worth changed post-ADHD diagnosis. In this episode, Sam shares her story of struggling with anxiety and depression and how learning she had a spicy brain changed everything.
I definitely need to get back into it, but I actually love silversmithing and making jewelry that way. So
nice.
I taught myself while I was furloughed during the great pandemic, and it was super fun. You know, I had all the time in the world to try a new hobby, and it kind of stuck. So I'm just waiting to clean up my ADHD gremlin cave so I can get back to it.
Yeah. Well, and that's one where there's a lot of heat involved and you need specific space and specific tools. And so, the gremlining.
Yes.
Let's make that a verb. Gremlining of other crafting stuff around it might actually be dangerous.
Exactly. I'm like, this room is a hazard in and of itself. We do not need to add heat to it.
Right. Do you have a favorite piece that you've created or something that you've done that's been special that stands out?
So I have one. It was probably a piece I made that was a little bigger. I usually like to get more dainty jewelry, but a friend ended up getting it. But it was this huge moonstone that had these gorgeous rainbow inclusions, and I had all these cool little metal moons I made out of silver to put on, and it was just very ethereal but ornate. It was just a very fun piece, and
that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad it went to a friend so I can still kind of see it, but
right. It stayed in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you get attached to the pieces as you make them sometimes?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Half the time I'll be making them and I'll be like, well, can't sell that one, or sorry, Mom, you're not getting that for Christmas. I'm keeping it.
I know you picked this out, but sorry, it's mine now.
Yeah.
At least you can do that with Mom.
Yes, I have the hardest time. I did a Halloween collection a few years ago, and I was really sad when pieces started selling because I was like, wait, that's the purpose. But at the same time, I'm like, they're really cool and I want to keep you. So
yes. Yeah. Well, you kind of have to find a balance then. You
exactly.
Keep some of the things and not keep all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So through your life, when did you start to kind of recognize that you were neurodivergent? Was there a big event, or was it kind of a slow reveal? How'd it go?
Yeah. So I want to say it was probably more of a slow reveal, that nice little slow burn. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I think when I was 16. So, I kind of always knew I was a little neurodivergent here and there. Didn't really, didn't really feel like I fit into the world. It just wasn't made for me. And was like, oh, it's probably just because I'm anxious all the time or depressed, and it's totally fine. But I will say a lot of the realization came it was maybe a year and a half ago. So I really hit almost a rock bottom with depression, and it was just really, really tough. And I joke around that I got a psychiatrist for my 30th birthday to like kind of get that fixed. And when I had my
Those
first appointment,
milestone birthdays, man, they get you.
exactly, I was like, well, better now than later. So
Yeah.
when we started talking, she's kind of like, I suspect you have ADHD, but I can't diagnose you with this. So it was, I kid you not, probably about a year till I could actually get my assessment. Like literally the
Wow.
first appointment, she had the referral in and they're like, our first appointment is 12 months away. So
Wow.
it was kind of a blessing in disguise the more I think about it. Because at that time, I thought my depression was so severe. We had a good 12 months to really get things in check. And I still had all these symptoms that
Mm,
for a while it was like, well, I'm just depressed or I'm anxious, but
mhm.
I'm heavily medicated and my depression levels are at zero. My anxiety levels are at zero, but there's
All of
still
this
these
is still
symptoms.
going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's where I was kind of like, I'm about positive I have this. And it was, a great experience going through the assessment, had a great doctor. But yeah, I'd say kind of when I hit 30 and all of that stuff culminated, and the more I did research and just talking to my friends that also have gone through the diagnosis process.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was kind of like, all right, I think we've got it. And the more and more I learned about myself, I was like, yeah, this something makes sense here that I have more than just like anxiety and depression going
Right.
on.
That there is something different, there's a
Yes.
seed of something different
Yeah.
here. Did you start as you started to kind of come to that self-awareness, did you start any self-accommodations? Did you start to change how you were doing things? Did it, or was it really after the diagnosis?
I would say probably right around the time, a few months before the diagnosis, was when I really started unmasking a little bit.
Mhm.
It was more so one of those things where I knew work was probably my biggest energy drain of
Yeah.
trying to look like a normal, happy
Mhm.
corporate girly. And no, I'm complete opposite, like social interactions. Ugh, can't do it. So I kind of slowly started just like letting that mask slip a little bit just to find that balance because work was just so exhausting. I'd come home and be like, I can't do anything. So
Mhm.
yeah, I kind of around then started making accommodations. And I even noticed like some of my work wasn't up to par where I'd like it because you know, was kind of letting the ADHD take over at that point
Sure.
and finding that balance. So I've really started using, honestly, this is recent and one of the most helpful tools I've ever gotten. It's called an Eisenhower matrix. And
Oh,
I use them with work all the time. It makes me like actually take a step back and really review each of my tasks because you rate them on important or unimportant and then urgent and non-urgent. So it
okay.
really helps, you know, because we all have to work and
Right. Yeah.
it's so easy to get lost in the weeds, especially when
Yeah.
like you are neurodivergent. It is so easy to hyper focus on something that is
The
not
wrong
important.
thing.
So,
Mhm. Yep.
I would say the biggest thing I really started doing after the diagnosis, and then I'm actually going to be pursuing, a therapist that specializes in ADHD because it's
Yeah.
one of those things I went my whole life masking. I don't know how to behave any other way, and, um, there's
Well, and
still
if you
things.
were
Yeah.
counseling before, you were masking during it, so, like,
Yeah,
it didn't
exactly.
it didn't
Yeah, exactly. Because 'cause I'd be
it
like,
might have
"Well."
had value, but
Yeah,
it wasn't, you dealing with
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So because there's still things that, medication isn't a magic pill. It's not gonna solve
Mhm.
everything, and
Yep.
it's made a huge difference, but there are still a lot of things that I'm kinda like, "Oh, I thought, this might get better," like executive dysfunction, those types of things, and that's where my
Yep.
psychiatrist was really like, "I think a therapist that specializes in just coping mechanisms is going to be a game changer. So, yeah, I'm gonna probably get that started up in the new year and really see how that goes.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and it's really
Mhm,
important, and as someone who has had multiple counselors through my life,
mhm,
I'm only now I've only been diagnosed for a year, and I was
mhm.
49 when I was diagnosed. So, like, when I talk about late diagnosis,
Yeah.
I'm talking I went almost half a century
Oh my
without a
gosh. Yeah.
diagnosis, So, like, but now I have a counselor
Mhm.
who is versed in this, and I've done a lot of work dropping my mask and,
Right.
trying to understand who the what the authentic pieces of me are.
Mhm.
And that's been I had was already in that process when I found her, but finding someone who can look at that is
Yeah.
it's a very different therapeutic experience to
Mhm.
be like with someone who's like, "Can you stop and tell me why you just did that?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Why? How?"
Yeah.
Like, I used to get away with this stuff, and I
Yeah.
can't get away with it anymore because, like,
Uh-huh.
she's clued in, right? It's yes,
Yep.
it's very different.
Yeah,
It's very
I'm
different.
really looking forward to it. I really
Mhm.
think that's kinda like that last missing puzzle piece that'll kind of, I don't wanna say feel normal because I don't wanna be normal, but kind of
Right.
feel functional again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to get to a place where you can
Mhm.
balance the
Yeah.
understanding of your differences with the ways that you
Mhm.
can unmask and then you can unmask safely. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
I'm so excited.
It's hard, but it is
Yes.
deeply rewarding, and,
Awesome.
hopefully have you noticed let me ask you this because I'm
Mhm,
wondering this now. For me, when I went on the ADHD medication, I had been
mhm,
diagnosed with anxiety, and I had struggled with anxiety my whole life. My
mhm.
anxiety dropped significantly when I started my stimulant
Yep.
medication. How are you experiencing, like, a change in those symptoms as well
Yes.
now that you have this figured out?
Yeah, because I would say my anxiety levels, before I got on the stimulant, it was, at a 1 or a 2.
Mhm.
I had an old therapist that always joked, she's like, "You don't know how to run on anything other than anxious."
Yes.
And,
Mhm.
everything clicks. It's like, yeah, I didn't know how, like, I
Right,
couldn't.
right.
So my last check-in, because we're still kinda going through the whole, like,
Yeah.
dosage
I'm
and
still going through that too, yeah.
yeah, the whole
Mhm.
tweaking and, she was like, "Hey, I don't know if you've noticed this, but, since you started your meds, your anxiety rating has been at a 0 consistently, whereas you always had at least a 1 or a 2." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Cool. Alright, we'll take it.
Right?
I'll take it."
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
very similar to my experience where
Yeah.
my anxiety dropped so significantly that
Mhm.
I notice it now.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right? Because I
Yes.
was, like you, running on some low level of
Mhm.
anxiety, and I try to explain to people who are undiagnosed, or I have
Mhm.
several people in my life who are resistant to getting diagnosed and resistant to
Mhm.
getting medicated, who I know it would benefit them greatly to do so. I try to explain that I had mistaken that low level of anxiety
Mhm.
for executive function.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's what got me to do things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's what got me doing things. Wasn't that I
Yep.
had a clear plan or clear thinking. It
Mhm.
was the anxiety, the 1 to 2 would start to ramp up toward a 3, and I would
Mhm.
start doing things,
Yep.
and I would not prioritize, I would not think through, I would not plan, I would just start
Yes.
doing because things needed to be
Yeah.
done, and so for that was my process, that was how, when I walked in for my assessment and they asked me, he's like, I'm so excited to talk to you because you have 4 college degrees and severe ADHD. Tell me how you did this
Yeah.
undiagnosed for your whole
Yeah.
life." And I was like, I would create systems and,
Yeah.
things and that. And we talked a little bit about that. But it took me a while of like reflection to step back and say,
Mhm.
I mistook my anxiety for executive functioning. And until I
Yeah.
got on the medication and was able to have the anxiety in my brain just sort of
Mhm.
like ramp down a little bit, I didn't recognize that there was like literally a difference between this
Right.
push and pull, right?
That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, 'cause I will say since I've started, um, my medication, I really am able to kind of like take a beat and actually think something through
Yes.
before making a
Yes.
decision. Because before I would just be like,
Yes.
oh, okay, we got to go do this. And we're going to jump
Mhm.
in and it's going to cause way more problems. But like now I'm actually able to go, okay, we're going to take a pause. We're going to think about it. We don't have to make a decision immediately. Like,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that's, I would say, one of the other biggest things I've noticed is, my brain function is just so much more clear. It doesn't feel like there's 10 different tabs open, one of them has music playing, I can't find it, and
Yeah.
it's just more
Yes.
so like, "Yes, we're good. Okay, let's evaluate, reevaluate, do what we need, and
Mhm.
move on." Yeah.
Right, exactly. Let's look at this in a way and we can that point of being able to take a beat and to be able to
Mhm.
step back and not feel like I'm constantly in a reactive state.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it is,
Yeah.
reaction versus
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
yeah.
Yep. It is such a game changer, and
Mhm.
I had an added bonus of my nervous system regulates on the stimulant in a way that I had never
Mhm.
had before. And now I am recognizing that, we're recording this right after,
Mhm.
the US Thanksgiving
Yes.
holiday.
Yep.
And I had a lot of family stress over the last few
Mhm.
days or over the last week. And I'm recognizing that I don't get caught in it like I
Oh, that's
used to,
awesome.
which
Yeah.
I think is a combination of
Mhm.
the nervous system regulation, of the
Yeah.
lack of anxiety, but I think
Mhm.
it's also partially the unmasking, because I think part of my mask was built to fit me in with other people, and because I
Yes.
didn't really know how to do that.
Yeah, no, I get you 100% on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able to make it home, due to sickness for Thanksgiving, but
Aw,
my mom and I were even chatting, and she's like, "Does coming home stress you out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it does." Like, it's just
good.
loud,
Yeah.
chaotic, and you know, when I was little, she always told me because my sister, big into instruments, so she's like playing piccolo, bagpipe, like the obnoxious ones. And my mom would be like,
Yeah.
just tune it out," and always be like, "You're so good at ignoring things." I was overstimulated and just
Right.
zoning out was what it
Right.
was, and
Exactly.
I explained that to her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So, like,
Yes.
how can we make this better when you come home for Christmas," type
Oh,
thing. So,
great.
yeah, like, just being able to recognize the small
Mhm.
things and have those candid conversations has been
Right.
so helpful.
Yeah, it really is. It really does make a difference. It really does. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you have a family that is receptive,
Thank you.
because,
Thank you.
that is a big that is a
Yes.
big gift.
Yes. I
Yeah.
am so thankful for them every day.
Mhm.
Like, of course, they joke around, like, anytime my dad calls, he'll start talking and go, "Squirrel." Like, the whole and
Yeah.
it's hilarious and I love it, but
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for their support and
Yeah.
just kind of
That's
being there
awesome.
for me through this whole journey.
Yeah. Do you find that they recognize how your ADHD has been a strength for you? Do you recognize how your ADHD has been a strength?
So, I think for me, I am a very empathetic person, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of that has stemmed from just being neurodivergent and never feeling like I fit somewhere.
Right.
So, I think one of my biggest strengths is just how I deal with people
Mhm.
and how I make people feel, and I really attribute that, now looking at like, "Oh, yeah, I have ADHD, like, this is why." But just going like, I can make someone feel comfortable, just
Mhm.
and my parents have even said that too. So it's kind of just they're like, "Yeah, you're a people person, but you're an introvert." And I'm like, "I feel bad for people and I don't want anyone to ever have to feel like I feel." So
Right.
I've kind of used that as a way to really, you know, just create spaces that anyone feels safe in.
Yeah. That's great. That's a beautiful thing. I feel my ADHD is similar.
Yeah. Yeah,
where I
it's
don't want people to feel excluded like I
mhm.
have felt. So I want to make sure to
Yeah,
feel that people feel
yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, everyone's always like, "Yeah, it's a superpower, you can do all these things," or hyper focus, and I'm like, "Yeah, they're cool, but until you're working on a craft project and you don't realize it's midnight and you haven't eaten,
Mhm.
like, I wouldn't call
Yeah.
that a superpower."
Yeah.
Like
Exactly. That has been my issue with that as well,
mhm.
is I don't like the storytelling around that. Like,
Yeah,
I appreciate where it's trying to turn something that is
mhm.
difficult into a positive, and I
Yes.
do feel like there are so many cool things about being
Mhm.
neurodivergent,
Yes.
but it is not, you know, Superman can turn on and off his flying.
Mhm.
He can choose
Yep,
when
exactly.
to fly.
Mhm. Yep.
I do not always get to choose the
No,
hyperfocus.
no, exactly, exactly. Oh, yeah, I always have to be careful when I take my meds in the morning. It's like I have to make sure I'm working on what I want to be, like, zoned in on because
Yeah, when they
if
kick
not,
in. Yeah.
if I'm on my phone, I will be on my phone for a k
Yep.
mhm.
Yep, I know.
So
I am
it
trying to break myself of the habit of being on my phone first thing in the morning just at
yeah.
all, because
Mhm.
I know the research, and I know that whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
you set that as your dopamine reward first thing in the morning. This is
Yep.
what you want to keep coming back to. And
Yep.
it's so hard to be in a society that is like becoming more and more dependent on our
Mhm.
pocket friends
Yes.
as, reliant for so much of our lives.
Yeah, oh, 100%.
Yes, to not just already feel that way, but when I set my brain to it, like,
Mhm.
I have learned, and I've done this for years because I worked from home for a long time, but if I sit down on my couch to have a cup of coffee, like, sometimes I'm like,
Mhm.
I'll have an easy morning, I'll ease myself into
Yeah.
my day, and I'll sit down on my couch, but, like, sitting on my couch is also where I check out most of the time, and so if I
Mhm.
sit down and have a cup of coffee and I pick up and I open TikTok, we're done.
Yep.
We're
Oh,
done.
I
We don't get
yep,
back to it.
yep. I call that the big sit, and if I have a big sit, nothing else is getting done. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
So my
definitely one of
breakfast has to
those.
go from my kitchen to my
Mhm.
desk, and I can
Yep.
have my cup of coffee, and I can kind of muck around, and I don't
Yeah.
have to, like, immediately dive into the big tasks,
Right.
but I do have to, like, be here and be,
Mhm.
these are the steps that we get
Yes.
into, you doing the work. And
Yep.
man, like, if my ADHD brain could just be a little less unruly sometimes,
It would be great.
I would that would be fantastic.
Oh, I get you 100%, like yeah, I for me, sometimes, like, with that whole, like, sitting down, everyone will always, because 'cause I'm hybrid, a lot of people
Yeah,
will
me
be
too.
like, "Why do you eat your lunch? Like, you
Mhm.
shouldn't eat your lunch at your desk." And I'm
Right.
like, "If I don't, I will not come back to
Exactly.
this
Yes.
desk.
Yeah,
Like, it has to be here.
yeah. Or if
I
I
don't
do
want it
come
to
back,
be."
I can't get back to the level of focus I
Mhm.
had before.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
I don't stop there and pick up where I was. I stop and I
Mhm.
pick up where I was when I sat down at breakfast,
Yes.
and, and needed that, like, ramping up time, and then that
Mhm.
loses my,
Yep.
my productivity window, which,
Yes, exactly. Because 'cause I'm days I'm in the office, love my coworkers, and they'll be like, "Yeah, come get lunch," and I'm like, "No, things I need to get done today," and they will not.
Right, right, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
like, have fun. I'll be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's good you kinda learned that about yourself.
Mhm.
Is that some of, like, what do you feel are the challenges you faced? Like, what is it? What are some of the things other than just not understanding what executive functioning is, or
Yeah,
anxiety and all of those
yeah.
stuff?
So for me, I mean, I guess I could I guess I need to rewind a little bit too.
Mhm.
So, like, before COVID, I was in the office 5 days a week and come home exhausted, literally
Yep.
on the couch, couldn't do anything. COVID came, fully remote. I was actually able to function a lot better, where it's like, I'm doing laundry, I'm actually keeping things clean,
Mhm.
there's a routine, but there's not really a routine.
Right. There's
Then
ri
when we start
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we started going hybrid, And that false routine really just crumbled where I'm back to masking half the time.
Mm,
I'm exhausted. You come back after work, or even just, an at-home day is I'm trying to recover, like active recovery while working. Then it's the weekend, and physically I might feel fine, but mentally I cannot for the life of me do something. It'll
mhm.
just be that whole, um,
Functional
I,
freeze.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
won't be able to function. And I've always been like, I feel lazy or a garbage person.
No.
And, which I've learned I'm not, it's just my brain.
Yes. Yeah, your
And
brain's a jerk. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing I ever heard was, if you were being lazy, you'd be having fun.
You're right. Yes.
And I'm not having fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like,
Yep.
I'm not having
Yep.
fun. Like, I want to do these things. I
Right.
just cannot.
Yeah, that's such a good insight too. Like I've heard something similar. I've heard
Mhm.
that, but I've also heard something similar. It's like if I had a choice, I would choose,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah,
I would choose
exactly.
I wouldn't choose this.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah,
I don't choose to have anxiety about making phone calls. I just,
exactly.
I wish that,
Mhm.
I have to make a phone call after our interview. So this
Oh
is
god.
why this is
Good luck.
hot for me right now.
Good luck.
Right? I'm like, "Oh god, I have to do that." And I
Oh my
put it
gosh.
off yesterday and it needs to be done today. So like
Mhm.
I need to do it and I know I need to do it. But, if I had the capacity to just do it, I would. Like
Mhm.
it's not that I am willfully
Mhm.
this way. And
Yeah.
that's been liberating and frustrating at the same time
Mhm.
because like I can recognize it in myself, but at the same time
Yeah.
I can't really change it.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things I was hoping, when I got medicated, things would get better, and I'm like, "No, no, it
Nope.
hasn't," but,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know, it's all good. We're learning, we'll find ways
Mhm.
to make it work, and we'll just keep trucking on. But yeah, it's kind of funny, like, the tasks that are painful, brushing my teeth before bed. Don't know why. Can't make myself do
Interesting.
it. That is the
Interesting.
one thing I have to fight myself to do. Like,
Huh.
it's the weirdest thing. I don't know why. I love having clean teeth, but nope.
But just the
Bedtime.
PDA kicks in of, like, you have to do this at bedtime
Mhm,
and, like,
mhm.
which,
Yeah,
technically it is the most important time to brush your teeth. If you're only gonna
exactly.
brush your teeth once a day, brush your teeth at night. Like
Exactly, exactly. Get all the crud from the day off. I'm like, "This
Yeah.
is disgusting," but nope, we
Yeah.
can't. Brain says
Yeah.
nope. So,
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
I struggle with washing my face at bedtime. Like I always want to
Yeah.
be like, I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
And I did have my optometrist tell me that if I didn't take my makeup off, I
Mhm.
was going to lose the capacity to wear contact lenses.
Oh
So I
gosh.
really needed to like do this. So that has been a
Yeah,
very great motivator, let me tell you.
absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was like, thank you for framing it that way because now I
mhm.
have a why, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I always try and do that where it's like, you could lose your teeth, like, you gotta do it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
being able to recognize it has helped. Do I do it every night? No, like, I'm exposing myself here, but, like,
I still struggle.
progress
Yeah.
is yeah,
Yeah. I don't get my eye makeup off every day. I know I
exactly.
woke up a couple days ago and I'm like, oh God, I know what she means now because I've been better. And I'm like, oh, now I
Mhm.
see. I
Right,
don't wake
right.
up like feeling like this. My eyes don't feel like this when I do take my makeup
Mhm.
off. So, of course, yes, we do need to
Yeah,
do this, but I still have to fight myself.
yeah.
And I love the advice that is like break things into smaller steps and
Mhm.
all this, but still like if you can't get going on that first step sometimes it doesn't really matter. It doesn't
Yeah,
really matter.
exactly, yeah, I'm like, if my brain is saying no, I really wish I could do something about it, but
Right? I
here we
really wish I
are.
could change this, but
Yep,
no, like,
this is yep,
this is the wall and we have hit it. And this is
yep,
what we're gonna deal with.
yep, and I'll always be like, "We'll try again tomorrow." No promises.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a fun ride. Just trying
Yeah.
to be graceful with myself, I think, is
Right? Yeah.
a big thing.
And give yourself grace, especially with
Mhm.
I think all of us with late diagnosis need to recognize and extend ourselves grace that
Yeah.
you were operating on hard mode and
Yeah.
didn't know it and didn't
Yeah.
recognize it and didn't know that, like, burnout is real, and
God,
you're
yeah.
probably on some level of burnout my whole life and just didn't
Yep.
really know it until now, because now I know when I'm heading into it and I can pull myself
Mhm.
back. But
Yep.
I didn't recognize it before. So, how I'm going to extrapolate a little bit from what we've
Okay.
been talking about. I feel like your diagnosis has been empowering and has
Mhm.
allowed you to kind of like change your daily life.
Yeah.
Do you have some examples of like maybe some little things that have had really great impact for you?
Yeah. So again, mentioning the Eisenhower matrix, that was
Yes.
like my
Can you
biggest
explain what the
Yeah,
you brought that up? Can you explain what that is in a little bit more
absolutely.
detail?
Yeah. So um it's basically 4 boxes,
Mhm.
and what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your to-do list and you're going to rank each item. I could never do to-do lists. I'd get way too overwhelmed
Right,
because
yeah, I get the same way. I just
it's
feel
so
like
hard to find
yeah.
like, see what's
Mhm.
urgent. But this actually forces you to take a step back and go, "Okay, hey, these are critical path things that need to get done." So,
Mhm.
I'll kind of use something from work as an example of we need to get this in to run an experiment. So
Okay.
that's going to be important and urgent. Whereas, maybe putting a sample order in for something else would be it's important but it's not urgent. So you would
Mhm.
go through your list and you'd rank everything if it's important or not important. And then
Okay.
you would go through and do it again if it's urgent or not urgent.
Okay.
So then you kind of just place those into the boxes where, urgent, important, get those done right away.
Right.
Important, not as urgent. And then the ones that are not important and not urgent, don't even think about them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really, I mean,
Nice.
yeah. And even just with like trying to do chores around the house too, it's really helped to break down like, this is the most critical thing I need to do to make these
Mhm.
other actions happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like identifying,
Mhm.
that is definitely one of the biggest
Yeah.
challenges that I face too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have, a whole household to take care of.
Mhm.
Like, what are the things that I need to
Yep.
urgently take care of? Well, if you don't make sure that the cats are fed, then they're going to wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning,
Exactly.
and you don't want that.
Right, exactly,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so that's been a big game changer. I will say the other thing is I got myself a little whiteboard that is magnetic and sticks to my fridge. I very much so am the person of if I don't see it, it does not
It doesn't
exist.
exist. Yeah. Hmm.
So I've really been it's been so helpful. I literally will just write down everything that's in my fridge, everything that's in my freezer. I'll, like mark it off if I've eaten it
Hmm.
all or like change quantities. Because I literally would go to the store and be like, oh, I need to get more like garlic and come home and already have 3 things of garlic.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's been a really nice tool for me to go, oh, I don't have to like stand here in front of the fridge and go, I need to feed myself. What am I feeding
Mhm.
myself? I can see literally on that board, oh, I have this. This is super easy. I can make this tonight. Or just
Awesome.
helping with meal planning. Cause I mean,
Yeah.
being neurodivergent and feeding yourself
Yeah.
that's one of my biggest
It's
challenges.
so hard. I
It's
just
so
said that
hard.
to somebody the other day. I'm like, the fact that I have to like figure out food every day,
Yeah.
multiple times a day, like
Mhm.
why? Who came up with
Yeah.
this plan? And can I talk to them, please? Because this is crap.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm just like, I'd like to have a word and
Right.
yeah.
I will
So
open my fridge and I will be like, I hate everything in here.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
why?
Yeah, and I will say it's made eating a lot easier where it's just like, "Oh, hey, I have different options," and I try and,
Mhm.
keep things that are gonna be easier to just, like, really low maintenance of, like, "Here's some
Right.
sheet pan veggies, let's throw them
Right.
in," and you've got
Yep.
you know, I used to always wanna be one of those, like, super healthy, fresh people, but I'm like, "I'm gonna forget it's there, it's gonna go
Yep.
bad, we're just gonna
Yep.
contribute to food waste,
Yep.
and"
I
we're
understand.
gonna we're just gonna do things that work for us. So
Mhm. Yeah, I
Frozen
have been
veggies.
deeply embracing frozen veggies and what I
Mhm.
can do with that.
Yep.
And my big hack for that is frozen rice packets that you can get at like
Yeah.
Trader Joe's.
Mhm.
And you heat them up in the microwave and it takes 3 minutes because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I would love to eat rice, but like I can't prepare myself to
Mhm.
cook it 30 minutes ahead of time because like
Right.
I go into the kitchen, I'm hungry usually. That's
Yes,
what gets me in
exactly.
there is that I'm hungry. And
Yep.
like 30 minutes to cook rice is something that's, even, 10 or 12 minutes to cook
Right.
pasta or whatever to boil the water takes too long sometimes. And
Mhm.
so those
Yeah.
3-minute packs of rice that I can throw in and I can throw some, you
Yeah.
know, frozen spinach in and throw in the microwave and heat up with,
Mhm.
black beans or other things. And, I try to have a protein prepped. I haven't done
Yep.
that in a long time, but, things like that,
Yeah.
yeah, that can be done quickly.
Yes. Yeah, and I used to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna meal prep, it's gonna be great," and I would literally eat 1 serving of it and be like, "I am so turned off from
I hate
this.
this. I hate this. I never
It's
want
the
to eat
worst
this
thing
again.
ever."
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I'm just like, "No, that's not us, it doesn't work for us, and that's okay." And
Exactly.
that's kind of really been one of the big things of, like, realizing it's okay. I don't have
Yeah.
to be like everyone else,
Right.
and
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
totally fine.
that should be the beauty that we have,
Mhm.
being neurodivergent, having a divergent path that we're on, like that should be the beauty of it. And
Yeah.
we don't really have to have this one size fits all
Mhm.
way to do things. Unfortunately, there is a lot of messaging, there
Yes.
is a lot of narrative that is,
Mhm.
hey, you need to be this way to be productive. And it's
Yep.
like, you know what? I write better at nighttime. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I will like be able to do great work at 10
Mhm.
o'clock at night sometimes because that's
Yeah.
when my brain will just be like, okay, we can write right now. Like,
Mhm.
I sent you the notes for today because
Mhm.
I finally got the motivation and the
Right.
focus to address things at 10 o'clock last night. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's well, okay, at least, okay, this is when this is happening. We're gonna go with
Exactly.
it, and you have to adapt.
Mhm.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, if you were to kind of look back on your life a little bit
Mhm.
and you were to have a conversation with a younger undiagnosed version of yourself,
Mhm.
what would you tell that version? Not that it can't be the diagnosis, but like
Right.
what would you tell them?
It's okay. Like, the world isn't ending because everything always felt so black and white,
Yes.
where it again, kind of going back to that whole anxiety thing of we have to do it now, everything felt very black and white then,
Mhm.
and again, it was, you're always told, like, "It's good to be different, it's fine," but, like, actually believe it. Like, do not just write it off. Be weird and be unapologetically weird because you're gonna feel so much better.
Yes, I
Like,
love that.
yeah, 'cause I will say, like, now that I've started unmasking more, I'm not as tired. Like, that exhaustion is not
Same,
there,
same,
and
so much the same.
I would love to tell little me, "Just do it." Like,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with it. If someone thinks you're weird, they weren't worth having in your life to begin with. So,
Exactly. That's their
yeah.
problem, not yours.
Yeah, exactly. So
Definitely.
that's kind of what I would go back and say is the world's not ending and just be weird. Like,
Nice.
yeah, don't try and fit in. And I think just looking back, that was always something I tried to do despite trying to be cool and saying I wasn't. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that drive to fit in is
Mhm.
really powerful, and it
Yeah.
it is really, and it is it's a survival instinct,
Yeah,
and those are
absolutely.
hard to fight.
Absolutely.
ADHD brains are survival instincts as well, like just the fact
Exactly.
that we exist.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. So, yeah.
Mm. Great. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for chatting
Yeah.
with me today. Let our listeners know, like, where can they find you if they want to talk with you or you have some projects you might want to share?
Yeah, so you can always find me on I have, like, multiple Instagrams because, again, I have multiple hobbies that come up at different times.
Yeah.
Um, so you can find me at sa.ro.studio. That's where I've been most active lately. It's also connected to my threads. So I would say that's kind of where I've been the weirdest lately and felt the
Excellent.
best. And yeah, if anyone wants to join my little corner of the internet, I'd love to have them.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really enjoyed this.
A huge thank you to Sam for joining me on the show today and sharing her story. I love the empowerment that comes from embracing having a spicy brain. And Sam's story highlights that so beautifully. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, like and leave a review, and share with your spicy brain friends. Follow us on Instagram at Divergent Paths Consulting, no spaces. And until next time, stay spicy.